Hello and welcome. I'm Debbie Plotnick. I am the Executive Vice President for State and Federal Advocacy, and it's my pleasure to invite you to our virtual Regional Policy Council meeting on Youth Voices. The Regional Policy Council is one of MHA's signature programs, and we're so happy that you're here with us today. And I want to do some really important thank yous. I want to start by thanking our sponsors. Thank you to Alkermes and Janssen and Myriad Genetics, Neurocrine Biosciences, Utska, Pfizer, Synovian, Takeda Lundbeck, and Teva. Your support is so important to us. Let's begin by covering a couple of important housekeeping tips. All of our guests, and thank you all for joining us, will be muted during the meeting. Please understand that we are muting everybody, but we're glad you're here. And thank you for those of you who are telling us who you are in the chat, because we really like to know who you are. And we're going to be using the chat for a lot of things today. We're going to be monitoring your questions. We're going to be responding to your questions as we can. There's going to be some links in there with some important information, some of the materials that you'll hear people talking about today, and some important information about our speakers. But we're going to kick today's meeting off with some introductory words from MHA's President and CEO, Schroeder Stribling. Schroeder has now been with us for about a year and a half, and we're so delighted that she is able to join us and offer words of welcome. Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mental Health America's February 2023 Regional Policy Council. It's wonderful to have so many advocates, allies, stakeholders, and policymakers here with us today. Thank you to the many generous sponsors and speakers as well who are making the program possible. I want to especially recognize our Mental Health America affiliates who work across the country every day delivering vital services to meet the unique needs of their communities. And I want to especially welcome one of our newest affiliates, Mental Health America of Utah, and to thank Executive Director Rena Rogers and founding board member Sherry Whitwer for their admirable work in establishing our 144th local affiliate. We're grateful to be working so closely this year with the National Governors Association and pleased to offer this day of policy dialogue alongside the NGA winter meeting. Mental Health America is especially grateful that NGA Chair Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey has named youth mental health as his annual platform and priority. We could not agree more that the crisis amongst our youth must be addressed with speed and with efficacy. We know from the overwhelming data, as well as from our own personal experiences, that young people of all ages and from all corners of our country are in distress and in crisis. And we need to meet our children and our youth where they are, addressing gaps in services for those who cannot access desperately needed urgent care, while also investing in prevention and early intervention for those exposed to risks ranging from harmful social media to toxic loneliness, as discussed in the Surgeon General's report on the youth mental health crisis. For all these reasons and more, we extend our gratitude to the NGA and to the many state governors who are focusing on this issue. We are also grateful to be working with Governor Lamont of Connecticut and Governor Cox of Utah as they endeavor to improve mental health in their states. We have had a change to our program today in that we had to postpone our award ceremony. However, we look forward to working with both governors' offices and supporting their efforts to advance mental well-being in Utah and in Connecticut. Therefore, we're going to dive right into the heart of our program, focused on youth and peer support. First, we will be hearing from Dr. Anita Everett and Dr. Belina Shaw of SAMHSA as they discuss national guidelines for child and youth behavioral crisis care. After which, we will hear from Mental Health America's Youth Leadership Council and Our Future in Mind about youth priorities for mental health in schools. And lastly, we will hear from RPC Council member and Executive Director of Mental Health Minnesota, Shanna Mulville, about the expansion of peer support and warm lines for youth in her state. Once again, I thank you for joining Mental Health America's Regional Policy Council today. Through our collaborative and concerted efforts, we are confident that we can make steady and positive progress for the millions of Americans who deserve equitable access to effective mental health care and every opportunity for healing, recovery, and thriving. Thank you all, and enjoy the day.
Thank you so much, Schroeder. We so much appreciate your remarks, and we look forward to the rest of our meetings this year, which will be in person, and you'll have the opportunity to shake Schroeder's hand and say hello to her. But we're going to move right into our program, as Schroeder said, and it's really my pleasure, and we're so thrilled and really honored to have Dr. Anita Everett and Dr. Belina Shaw with us today. They're going to offer an introduction to the national guidelines for child and youth behavioral health crisis. Dr. Everett is the Director for Mental Health Services at SAMHSA, and in this role, she provides executive leadership for federal efforts to improve the nation's mental health system. Prior to her arrival at SAMHSA, she served as the Section Chief of the Johns Hopkins Bayview Community and General Psychiatry Department in Baltimore. She was on the faculty of Johns Hopkins, and she has also throughout her career served the federal government in various roles and provided leadership to the American Psychiatric Associations in the states and nationally. And she served state governments, and she has served the federal government, and she's even worked on international projects, including the implementation of mental health services in Iraq and Afghanistan. You can see more of the amazing things that Dr. Everett has done in her bio that's being posted in the chat. You'll also hear in this segment from Dr. Belina Shaw, and she's the Senior Medical Advisor within the Centers for Mental Health Services at SAMHSA. And she previously served as the Medical Director for Behavioral Health in Prince George's County, Maryland. And she is triple certified in the areas of child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry. So like Dr. Everett, she's also a very accomplished psychiatrist, and more about Dr. Shaw and her accomplishments, again, can be found in the chat. So let's hear from these amazing docs who were so gracious to offer us this video and explanation and an introduction to the national guidelines for child and youth behavioral health crisis.
Welcome. Dr. Shaw and I are here today to talk about the national guidelines for child and youth behavioral health crisis care. We're very excited about this document. One of our rationales for creating the document, of course, is to have a separate, document that focuses in particular on ideas and elements that we would like to see in crisis services development as our nation builds out on the crisis continuum of care. And just, as many of us are aware, this has been precipitated by the transition in July of this past year, July of 2022, from what was previously known as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline to a nationally available suicide prevention and crisis call line that's available from any landline or cell phone in the United States now by calling or dialing 988. So today specifically, we're going to be talking about a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to provide a broad overview, and then I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Dr. Shaw, who's going to talk more specifically about the elements in the guideline itself, and then provide a few examples for us. This is what the documents look like, and in particular, we're from SAMHSA talking about the document there, the National Guidelines for Child, Youth, Behavioral Health Crisis Care, and a companion document that was created by a partnership with NASHPA, the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors, that drills down a little bit more into the notion of a safe place to be. Largely at SAMHSA, when we talk about crisis care, we talk about three elements to crisis care. We frame those around the needs of a person who's actually in crisis. We like to start with the person at the center. And so we say, what does a person in crisis need? A person needs someone that they can talk with, that's manifested through the 988 line. It's, again, nationally available now. They may also need someone to respond, someone to come in person. And or as a third element, they may need a place to go, a safe place to be. In each of those elements, we are encouraging states, localities to build out to the extent possible so that there is a call taker that has ideally awareness of local knowledge. There is a response that can happen in many communities, of course, right now, that's law enforcement, but increasingly as the system's built out, we much prefer that there be a behavioral health component to the first ability, with the ability to first respond, and also increasingly that component includes child specialized responders who are trained and comfortable with working with the kinds of crises that children have, and the third is a place to go. So this does build on SAMHSA's longstanding history of and experience in working with children and the way we think about children. We know that children have many features broadly that make them distinguished from adults and the kinds of needs that adults have. Many children, particularly those with complex social conditions and situations, need more than just one system to be working with. We need education to work together with, sometimes with families, sometimes with treatment providers, sometimes with criminal justice or juvenile justice in the case of children, social services, and other systems that are involved. And so children are not just little adults. They have a different kind of need. One other thing that characterizes the difference between children is that by nature, children are dependent on parents or other caretakers in their world until they get to a certain age, and legally until they become, age of majority or able to function independently legally. So the third element is a safe place to be. And we recognize for children that we much prefer that be home, staying in a home setting with supports. But sometimes it also may include emergency rooms or hospital settings for children when that is the scenario or the level of care that best meets the safety needs of the child. At this point, I'd like to turn over to Dr. Belinda Shaw, who is a child psychiatrist and going to be talking a little bit more in detail about some of the elements of the document itself. Dr. Shaw?
Thank you, Anita. And I'm so glad to be here today to present about the National Child Crisis Guidelines. And, I think at the core of this, Anita has really framed it so well, is that it's the youth and the family that are defining their crisis. And that really dictates who intervenes and how and when, whether or not that's through the crisis call center with someone to talk to, someone to respond with mobile crisis and response that is focused and framed on a very youth-friendly and a youth-informed approach, and a safe place to be that we'll talk about a little bit more later as well. And the guidelines have several core principles, and the key one, as Anita just mentioned, is safety. And then we also have equity, being trauma-informed, incorporating peer support, being culturally and developmentally appropriate, and truly having a no wrong door approach. And over the course of this presentation, we will focus on these core principles and talk about them just briefly. So there are some shared principles that we used in the creation of these guidelines from the National Guidelines for Behavioral Health Crisis Care, the Best Practice Toolkit, that was focused primarily on adults. But when you reframe some of these shared principles with respect to young people, that it really creates a different frame for us. So I'm just going to go through them and think about them from that perspective. Recovery. When you address recovery needs in youth, their health, home, community, and purpose are really being developed as they develop their identity, their roles, their dreams, visions. And we want to make sure that a behavioral health condition doesn't impede that trajectory and them being able to really go to wherever they'd like to be in life. Trauma-informed care. To the right of the slide, you see the adverse childhood experiences pyramid. And we know that trauma in childhood can have long-term effects on both mental and physical health. And trauma-informed care is so critical in this developmental stage. The role of peers. Young people, especially adolescents, as they develop their identity, we know that older adults, parents, have a different role, not a less significant role, but a different role. And peers, their peer group rises in significance. And so when we think about young people engaging in behavioral health care, that we want to make sure that they have people that look like them, that identify with them, and that they can feel comfortable with as part of that care delivery team. Zero suicide or suicide safer care. Suicide has been unfortunately rising in young people. And even in some of our youngest ages, when you think about young people under the age of, say, 10 or 8, where they might not even understand the whole finality of death, actually dying by suicide. So we want to make sure that we don't ignore those young people. And there are also some higher risk groups that have been having increasing rates, such as Black youth, as well as American Indian and Alaska Native youth that have had significantly high rates in this area. Safety and security is paramount, and I think Anita has touched on that greatly, so I won't continue more there. And then finally, this partnerships, especially with law enforcement, 911 dispatch and emergency medical services, this is so vital as we think about the school to prison pipeline and the criminalization of mental illness that has been going on in our country in so many ways. So another core set of principles that this has been built upon are the systems of care principles. And I think that Anita has framed this beautifully again with thinking about how do we collaborate and coordinate. That's our bottom right tile on the slide, where we coordinate and collaborate with all the systems with which youth are involved. But we also want to make sure that these programs and services are youth-guided, family-driven, and accessible. The core principles, we already alluded to them in the very beginning slide where we saw the three main, it's always heard of the same time. The core principles. We've already seen this before, but I just want to reiterate a couple of them here. And one of them is that these guidelines are focused on providing culturally and linguistically appropriate and equity-driven services. We want these services to really be services that are tailored to the needs of individuals, and there are actually specialized sections in the guidelines with respect to different populations that have higher risk and higher needs. As Anita mentioned, there is a key difference in the other guidelines, a safe place to be. And this safe place to be is focused on providing treatment in the least restrictive settings of their home or community. And the stabilization may occur over a longer period of time than, say, a stabilization center that's often a 23-hour observation period. They're a good resource in the crisis continuum, but we do know that, unfortunately, not every community will have such services. And sometimes youth may have the acuity of needs that require them to be in emergency departments or out-of-home placements. And so this is really an alternative for those youth who are able to stay in their home and community. But we think it's a very important one so that they can really grow and thrive in the settings that they already live in. They live and go to school. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of exemplars that highlight these guidelines. I thank Catholic Charities of Baltimore and Dr. Ron Means for providing us with these slides. And they run a program in Baltimore City called the Baltimore City Child and Adolescent Crisis Response Services, or BCARS. And there's a lot of services that they provide within a continuum of care that involve early identification and treatment of youth who are in need. Their services are linked to their local 988 line through a 24/7 hotline. And they also provide urgent care services. They provide mobile crisis services, psychiatric rehabilitation services, as well as community-based stabilization services. So the BCARS stabilization services are a great community-based alternative. There are two main types of services that they have, and their traditional program is a 2-week home-based program that's focused on stabilization and linkage to other services. And then they also have actually a stabilization program that works with their Department of Social Services. And this can happen for up to 6 weeks. And their main purpose is not only to stabilize their symptoms, but also to avoid out-of-home or additional placement disruptions and or out-of-home placements. And then the final example that we're going to share is the Connections Health Solutions Crisis Response Center in Tucson, Arizona. And here they provide 24/7 crisis care, and they serve over 2,000 youth annually in their stabilization center. There's no wrong door, everyone is accepted, and about a quarter of them come via police. So it's a great way to divert them from continued law enforcement engagement. And they also have not only an urgent the 23-hour observation unit, but walk-in services as well. In the Connections Health Solutions Crisis Response Center, I just wanted to highlight that although we would assume that adolescents are the majority of the youth that are served, that also these 8 to 12-year-olds are a significant proportion of the youth served. And that goes back to some of what I was discussing about our rising youth suicide rates in earlier ages and how important it is to make sure that we're not only serving adolescents, but we're serving children in these systems too. And what's great is that although this is an out-of-home community-based stabilization service, that 80% of them are discharged back to the community instead of the hospitals, emergency departments, or jail. And almost 100%, 98% of families recommend that they would return or they would recommend the Community Stabilization Center to others as well. So finally, I just want to return to our nondescript bricks here that remind us of a safe place to be, that whether or not that's home, community-based, or hospitals. And I'll turn it over to Anita for closing remarks.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Shaw. I just, want to close by saying, we are so excited about this whole effort that involves increasing access for those in need of mental health services. For us, this is the 60th year anniversary of the passage of the original Community Mental Health Center Act. And I think, many of us that have lived and worked in that system for a long time recognize that we've come a long way, but we've still got a ways to go. And this, for us right now, this is one of two major projects that we really feel like will help to create a tipping point to get us much, much closer to the concept of good access to quality services for the whole spectrum of individuals who live with, suffer with, and are impacted by mental illnesses. Crisis care and the related services are an extremely important element of a really strong response and capacity for mental health services overall. So thank you very much for your interest in our area, and we want to be here to provide support as places and systems and localities around our nation help to build crisis services that serve individuals in need. Thank you.
Thank you again to Dr. Everett and Dr. Shaw. SAMHSA has been working very hard. MHA and our collaborators have been working with them to build out the 988 system as it comes online. But we know that hitting a crisis point is not where we want to get to. Certainly, we have to serve people. And we just heard from Dr. Shaw how children younger and younger are showing up in crisis situations as well as adolescents. So prevention, that always has been top of MHA's agenda. We're going to hear right now from our youth panel, and our youth panel is going to tell us some really important things about how it is we attend to things before stage 4, as we say at Mental Health America, and why it's so important to listen to their voices. Today, we are joined by Future in Mind members, Brianne McSorley, Tessa Cohn, Liliana Delasami, Eddie Liu, and Alex Allen. We're also going to hear from Bree Kennedy, and Bree is a former member of MHA's Youth Mental Health Leadership Council, and they're going to tell us in their very own voices their priorities for preventing crisis and for helping the nation's youth with their mental wellness.
Hello, my name is Bryn McSorley, and I'm grateful to be here today at Mental Health America's Regional Policy Council meeting, focused on the importance of addressing youth mental health at such a critical time. As a high school student from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I'm deeply aware of the current youth mental health crisis and have seen the ways it's impacted my peers, particularly as we recover from years of life disruption and loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic, the impact of social media, climate change, and the state of politics, discrimination, and gun violence in schools, as well as getting into college, and the pressure of growing up and finding our way in the world beyond high school are just a handful of the factors that are contributing to the current state of adolescent mental health, which, instead of improving, has been worsening over the past decade. 75% of mental health conditions begin by the age of 24, meaning that prevention and early intervention are and always have been critical. We must act early if we want to protect mental health and promote recovery so that all people can live long and healthy lives of purpose. Now, however, we're seeing increasing percentages of young people with worse mental health starting earlier. With the support and tireless leadership of many advocates and policymakers, there's been an exciting shift in attention and prioritization of youth mental health in response to these growing trends. In recent years, public awareness and demand for action in youth mental health made a difference across the country. While we are grateful for this action, there is one key group that is still often excluded from these policy-making decisions: young people. As a young person today, I live in a world far different than anything we've collectively seen before in the past. This means that most people making decisions about mental health resources and supports for my peers and I do not know what it is like to grow up in this world with so much uncertainty and massive change. The only way to accurately and successfully assess and address the mental health needs of youth today is to treat young people as valued and essential partners and recognize them as the leaders they are, because we hold key insights into the biggest challenges at hand and have a unique ability to see the gaps and opportunities that exist in the current approach to addressing youth mental health. I have witnessed the powerful impact of integrating the voices and ideas of youth in my work as a leader in Pennsylvania. I also witnessed the impact of youth perspectives as a recent participant in Mental Health America's Our Future in Mind policy training. In this training, I was one of 50 current recent high school students learning about how to make a difference as a leader in high school mental health policy. A key component of this training was the discussion of adultism and the power of youth voice. Adultism means that youth voices are often taken less seriously or considered less valuable, even when the conversations are centered on the lives of young people themselves. This misconception is that young people have not lived long enough to understand their own lived experiences. Yet, the people making decisions about our lives cannot understand ours. Young people have important solutions and insights, and if we don't listen to them, we will miss this critical time of need and opportunity to meet the needs of young people. If we want to address youth mental health, we have to center the people most impacted, young people themselves. Now, I'm excited to introduce my fellow Our Future in Mind graduates who will discuss youth-identified and informed policy priorities to address mental health in schools.
A few years ago, when I was a senior in high school, I was suffering from the worst anxiety and depression I'd ever had. It was the second year of COVID, and I'd been stuck in the house for so long that even the thought of leaving caused anxiety. I had also just moved the year before and didn't know anyone at the school. While I did have a good support system consisting of my parents, a therapist, and a psychiatrist, I still found it difficult to talk about what I was going through. Even talking to my closest friend felt too hard. I wanted to know if there was some support at my school for students who were struggling. To much surprise, there wasn't. It seemed like something the school would want to invest in since COVID took a toll on everyone. I reached out to two of my guidance counselors, and they helped me start a peer-led support group for students who were suffering from mental illnesses. And while it didn't get as much attention as I was hoping, it did help me process what I was going through. When I got to college, I noticed that there wasn't anything similar on campus. I again reached out to a few offices and connected with another group of students who were trying to do the same thing. We began working together and have now successfully trained peers and launched our program. High school and college can be a really isolating time. These students are going through massive changes, and a lot of them don't have anyone to talk about it. It can be even more challenging for students with mental illnesses. COVID also completely altered the developmental path for students. Everyone who was in school during COVID knows how difficult it was to acclimate. First, to being at home all the time, and then having to integrate back into society while acting like nothing happened. Society is requiring these students to go back to a normal life after experiencing one of the most difficult and confusing transitions of their lives. It is also no surprise that the amount of people suffering from mental illnesses has risen in the past few years. In a recent study done by Mental Health America, it showed that more than 1 million students are currently suffering from mental illnesses. In 2019, 16% of youth ages 12 to 17 reported experiencing a past year major depressive episode, compared to 8% in 2009, double the previous rate. Rates of children's emergency department visits related to deliberate self-harm increased 329% between 2007 and 2016. Death by suicide among youth increased by over 30% between 2014 and 2017. Without even taking an intersectional approach to this issue, i.e. the fact that a lot of people can't afford mental health services, or accounting for the damage that COVID had, we can see that this needs immediate attention. The state of mental health in this nation needs to be top priority. According to the American School Counselors Association, school counselors are aware that students often communicate more readily to peers than adults. Peer support programs can enhance the effectiveness of school counseling programs by increasing outreach and raising student awareness of services. Through proper selection, training, and supervision, peer support can be positive influences within the school and community. Peer-led support programs are a wonderful solution to this issue since students are already turning to each other. It is simply adding on to what is already happening. A peer-to-peer program is one in which students who are trained in mental health first aid provide support and suggestions to their peers. It can be a formal group within the school with a dedicated room and mental health professionals, or it can be more informal, with peers simply reaching out to other students. Either way, peer programs make mental health support more accessible financially, socially, and geographically. The cost of mental health services has gone up significantly in the past few years, not to mention the fact that there aren't enough of these professionals to support the amount of people suffering. By having a support system within the school, it allows students to access help without the worry of money or travel. It also goes beyond mental health and allows students to build a culture of belonging and understanding. The peer support program that just launched on my campus was started by a small group of students who voluntarily came together and created the program. We wanted to create a place for students to connect with others and feel comfortable asking for help. We interviewed, selected, and trained other students who were interested in the program. Our training was not created by a trained healthcare professional, but rather by the students who had suffered before. They knew the types of things that we needed to be proficient in order to help others. A few of the topics we covered were active listening, warning signs, and when to report a situation to a trained professional. All the training was taught by the founding members of the program. Once the students were trained, we set them up with a Google number so that people could get in touch with them without giving away too much personal information. We also have an Instagram where students can get to know all the different trained peers and find out their schedules. When they need some extra support, they can reach out and set up a time to talk, either in person or at a dedicated space or virtually. In the next semester, we hope to find a dedicated office for this program. Youth-centered problems require youth-led solutions. Young people are more likely to turn to their peers for support. Let's train them in the skills they need to handle it when, not if, it happens. We need to trust the students will provide support to their peers from a place of lived experience and understanding. And we need to provide them with the infrastructure and training so they can continue to support each other.
Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Liliana Dalmasi and I would like to discuss with you issues that students have been experiencing in regard to excused student mental health days in schools. My experience with having excused student mental health days in my school system has not been positive, to say the least. In my opinion, taking a mental health day is always a daunting task that stresses me out. The possibility of missing important information, not getting the necessary help I need when I return, missing homework and surprise tests, constantly stresses me out on my mental health day off. Additionally, the pressure that I feel to make up everything I miss in the limited amount of time allowed can be crippling at points. This is due to the fact that many teachers and school policies dictate you must complete all the work you have missed in the same amount of time you have been absent from the classroom. Additionally, I am faced with the fear that I will have too many unexcused absences from school. Absences due to mental health issues are not a viable reason to get excused from a school day in most places. For most schools, if students have a certain amount of unexcused absences, they may not participate in certain activities such as sports and other after-school activities. All in all, students feel penalized when they return back to school just because they took a day off to take care of themselves. I am not the only one experiencing this issue. I have realized many of my peers have experienced this issue as well. For these reasons, many of my peers, including myself, constantly have a fear of taking a day off, even if we are having a mentally challenging day. As a result of this, we are more drained and emotionally exhausted when we return to school. Recent studies done by the Mayo Clinic have shown that taking a break can greatly improve your mental resilience, attitude, productivity, and physical health, while reducing your feelings of burnout and chances of mental health crisis. Additionally, through their research, they discovered that people who experience mental health issues were able to better deal with their mental health symptoms by simply taking a mental health day. Mental health days allow you to take the necessary time you need to better yourself. Mental health days let you decompress, relax, recharge, and rejuvenate your mind and body. And especially for students, they help us be better equipped to deal with the stresses of school life. Mental health days also give students something they can fall back on so they feel supported while experiencing the stressful environments schools introduce them to. Therefore, they are a crucial part of taking care of everybody's overall health. There are several ways we can encourage this rise of change and influence people to join this great cause. We can promote ideas on social media through a plethora of ways, such as TikTok, Instagram, posts, emails, graphics, infographics, challenges, etc. We mainly want to focus on virtual spaces, though, because it is more accessible to people and can be seen by a larger demographic in a shorter period of time. However, we can still create flyers, posters, and cards to spread the information. Some ways we can work to get policies made for this issue is to talk and advocate to key players in our school systems. These people could be superintendents, principals, school committees, assistant superintendents, student members of the board, counselors, and teachers. The people I've listed definitely play a key part, an important role in making excused mental health days widely accepted by more schools. State legislators and education board members are people that we can contact who have a big voice and the ability to bring about change. For this reason, we need to contact them about our concerns and get them on board with the new idea of this new possible change. All this can be done so that hopefully one day in the near future, excused mental health days for students will be nationally recognized and accepted by all school systems. Although this is an ambitious goal, it can be achieved with the help of others that are also passionate about this topic. I truly do believe that making this change to our school systems will brighten the future of our students' lives and will allow them to instill the importance of self-care in their lives, which in the long run will make them happier and healthier human beings. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eddie, and I am a high school junior from New Jersey. And as a student, it is clear how deeply the youth mental health crisis is impacting us. 2 weeks ago, 2 of my school's peer institutions suffered suicides. A few months ago, this almost happened at my school. Now, I'm a prefect, which basically means a dorm RA for a boarding high school. And I encountered a situation with one of my underclassmen that I was taking care of. And I was doing work one night and they came in and they were on the verge of tears. Their relationship, their friendships, their relationship with their parents, and most importantly, schoolwork had them on the verge of self-harm. And thankfully, because he was able to come and reach out to me, we were able to get him to medical attention. But rates of suicide and self-harm have increased dramatically in recent years, with many students showing up in emergency departments due to mental health crisis. And while mental health is clearly a dire problem among youth, there's often very limited information about the basics of mental health, such as how to support your own mental health, how to respond to peers who are struggling, and how to identify signs of mental health conditions among your peers. Instead, students are often left to figure these things out on their own, which creates even more stress and worsen mental health, which prevents young people from doing the things that matter to us that we deserve to do, such as, having fun or spending time with our friends or exploring our interests. And because of this lack of information, young people usually have to turn to the scattered information available from peers or social media, where humor is often used to talk about mental health. And so when students feel as though they're struggling, they think they aren't going to be taken seriously by their peers. This is why mental health education within schools is a necessity. This can double both as a preventative and causative measure. By providing thorough education, students will be armed with the knowledge to address initial feelings of stress, which is always easier than treating more serious anxiety and depression. But it also reduces stigma among the school community. If all students and faculty are consistently discussing mental health, a community of awareness and safety will be created. This will encourage further collaboration in the mental health sphere, such as with peers and adults, when encourage students to get the help they need. Although school can be one of the largest stressors in young people's lives, it can also be a powerful platform to help students combat the widespread mental health crisis. My friend is doing better now, but it never should have gotten to that point. If he had the necessary knowledge, he would have been able to reach out for help earlier. Mental health education is a crucial step that must be implemented as soon as possible. Students will be able to get better help for themselves and others. And so it is up to you to decide whether students' well-being is as important as any other subject in school. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexander Allen, and I'm a sophomore in Montgomery County Public Schools, Maryland, and a graduate of the Our Future in Mind program. I will be discussing the importance of mental health professionals in schools. I first reached out to the school counselor at my school after the COVID-19 pandemic because of the increased awareness of mental health nationwide. Before high school, I only talked to my counselor to take a test to get into an advanced math class, so it was eye-opening to see how beneficial talking to my school counselor could be. It felt relieving to have someone listen to my thoughts and work through them with me. Unfortunately, not all students know they have a mental health professional in their school, are too scared to talk to them, or feel they can only discuss academics with them. Mental health professionals can be counselors, psychologists, social workers, or pupil personnel workers, but they all have one overall purpose: supporting students and families. However, when all these vital resources are stretched thin, students in need of support don't get the resources they need. For example, students told to talk to their counselor sometimes need to wait days until they're free, or aren't able to contact them at all. School counselors, who focus on teaching students valuable coping skills and are a safe place for students to talk and work through issues, experience this problem. While the recommended ratio for school counselors is 1 counselor to 250 students, the national average is 150 higher, at 1 counselor to 408 students. Without enough counselors in a school, students must wait to deal with their issues, which can lead to them developing unhealthy habits and turning to violence to deal with their problems. With psychologists who play a vital role in providing students accommodations, this happens as well. On average, there's one psychologist to 1,127 students, over double the recommended amount from the National Association of School Psychologists of one psychologist to 500 students. When there isn't a proper student to psychologist ratio, psychologists are overworked and forced to pick what they have time for, causing weak connections with members of their school community. A recent study determined that 70 to 80% of youth who receive mental health services receive them at school, making it imperative to invest in mental health professionals. Students who feel discussions about mental health aren't welcome at home usually turn to school resources and professionals for support. We need students to have easy access to safe spaces and supports in their school, and mental health professionals are crucial in achieving these goals. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna Kennedy, and I'm a former member of MHA's Young Mental Health Leaders Council. Thank you to all of our amazing speakers. As you heard, they are all graduates of Mental Health America's Our Future in Mind program. This program, piloted in the fall of 2022, focused on training current and recent high school graduates in school mental health policy advocacy. They spent 3 months meeting with leaders, including legislators and youth activists, building relationships with MHA's network, and building a supportive community. We saw throughout the training that students felt unheard in much of their lives, that their perspectives and solutions are not prioritized, and that they are not engaged in changing the world around them. A survey of 2,014 to 24-year-olds conducted by MHA found that less than 1 in 4 young people felt as though they can make a difference in mental health in their communities, despite many wanting to make a change. They are experiencing the struggles firsthand and witnessing their peers as well. As leaders in policy, you have the opportunity to listen to young people, and importantly, to encourage them beyond just listening to their feedback. It is imperative that leaders are building pathways similar to these to ensure young people have the skills, resources, and relationships needed for real and sustained change. In my work with youth, I see how much of a difference it makes when someone listens and takes you seriously. Even though young people are young, their feelings and thoughts are still valid, complex, and important like everyone else's. We thank you for listening to these statements and also call on you to use your resources, whether that is building a policy advocacy program, adding youth to your board of directors, mentoring someone, or listening to the young people in your life to embody and practice listening to and building youth voice and power.
Thank you so much. I know I'm humbled by these young people, and I take what they have to say very seriously. And as Bree implored us, I hope that all of the people attending today too, and we through our Regional Policy Council will work to amplify their voices and what they've told us today. I want to do an additional thank you regarding our young people. I want to thank Kelly Davis, who is MHA's Associate Vice President for Youth and Peer Services, and Karen Howard, who is our Director of Policy and Advocacy, and they have worked very hard with the young folks in these programs. And we so appreciate them taking time out of their schedules. They are students, and they took the time to share these messages with us. Speaking of our Regional Policy Council, we're about to hear from one of our Regional Policy Council members, from Shauna Mulvihill. Now, Shauna has served as the Executive Director at our affiliate in Minnesota, Mental Health Minnesota, and she's been there since 2015, and she's been on our Regional Policy Council almost as long. And we are so happy that she has listened to young people in Minnesota. She's going to tell you about what she's heard. And a more complete bio for Shauna can also be found in the chat. So please, let's hear from Shauna.
Hi, my name is Shanna Mulvihill. I'm the Executive Director of Mental Health Minnesota and one of your Regional Policy Council representatives. I'm going to talk real briefly today about a program that we started recently called We Can Relate, and it's a way that we have worked to respond to the mental health needs of youth with a warm line that's specific to teens and young adults. To provide just a little bit of context about why we felt that this was the time to jump into this, our screenings have skyrocketed, as certainly many of us across the country have seen, and in particular for youth and young adults. You can see here that we've seen our screenings for those under age 18 rise faster than any other population, and continue to go up even into 2022 very quickly. Overall, our screenings for this age group have increased 700% since 2019. We've also seen our screenings between the ages of 18 and 24 go up quite a bit as well, although those leveled out considerably between 2021 and 2022. The other piece of context I would point to would be our Minnesota student survey results. So in Minnesota, we survey students every 3 years. And in 2022, students reported greater struggles with mental health, such as depression and anxiety, than at any other time in the history of the survey. That survey began in 1989 and occurs every 3 years. So we are now up to nearly 30% of Minnesota students reporting long-term mental health problems, which is defined in the survey as 6 months or more. So in our interest in trying to help meet some of the needs for youth and young adults, we started thinking about what else we could do as an organization to just better meet those needs. So we considered a few things and did some research. We held some focus groups and did a couple of surveys of students, and both college students and high school and middle school students. And those showed a very clear interest in getting peer support, but also really demonstrated to us that there was a real lack of formal programs in our schools and communities for this. There's also a real range of availability of peer support that really varies by school. Some schools had some specific programs set up, others had nothing at all. Those that were set up perhaps varied year to year based on student interest or availability of an advisor to help out. Use of technology and social media platforms, it also became very clear that that was essential in any approach to this work that we would do. The other piece that was really underlined as we talked with students and young adults was that anonymity and confidentiality were very important. And so as we thought about how we push that service or that peer support out there, that was really top of mind for us. We also were really observing that, simply adding texting or online chat to our existing peer support models just wasn't enough. We needed to do something different. So what we decided to do was take two separate steps. One was to build an opportunity for teens and young adults to access peer support regardless of where they attended school or if they weren't in school at all. And so it pulled the concept of peer support out of these unique programs that may be very successful in schools, but certainly varied in terms of their availability for students and made something available statewide. We also wanted to promote the provision of informal support in schools, as well as connections to resources as we move forward. So the first thing we did was create a new branch, if you will, of the Minnesota Warm Line. So Mental Health Minnesota has been running the Minnesota Warm Line since 2015. We take about 15,000 calls a year now, and it's open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. A number of years ago, 2017, we had added texting as an option for reaching out to the Warm Line. And in early 2022, we also added online chat. But we didn't see much of a shift in terms of young people reaching out to us despite those changes in the ways that they could reach us. So for us, that really spoke to the fact that we needed to shake things up a little bit if we really wanted to reach that demographic. So part of that was about branding something that was unique to youth and young adults. Another part was about thinking about how we really focus how the service was delivered, as well as who is responding to those inquiries for peer support. So we set up a service called We Can Relate, which is free and anonymous online peer support for teens and young adults who are struggling with their mental health. We designed the service to be delivered strictly via online chat because that is what we were hearing from our focus groups that the students and youth wanted. They don't want to talk on the phone, and they also didn't want to text. We had sort of made a prior assumption, frankly, that texting was going to be a good option. When in reality, what we heard was, when I text, my parents see my phone bill and they know what number I've been texting to. Online chat felt more anonymous. And so we set up the online chat, which can be accessed through our website, but it can also be directly accessed through social media channels like Instagram and Facebook. We also changed the way the service was staffed. And so rather than using our current warm line staff to respond to these online chats, we trained new volunteers who are young adults age 18 to 25 who have also faced mental health concerns and can, quote unquote, relate to what teens and young adults are going through right now. Because it was a pilot program, we set it up for fairly limited hours. So it's open right now, Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we actually kicked off the service in May of 2022. The next thing we did was think about how we wanted to get information out there around providing peer support on a more informal basis, as well as just making support available and creating an environment in our schools where students felt comfortable opening up about their mental health. To do that, we created a campaign for our schools called I'm Here to Listen. And it was very simple, and it involves 3 pieces of materials. The first is stickers that you can see here on this slide. Very simple stickers that can be placed on classroom doors, whiteboards, lockers, laptops, water bottles, anywhere a student might be able to see. And those stickers are available for students to use, for teachers, for counselors, for staff, anyone who wants to convey that if someone needs to talk, they're willing to listen. So we set up we made the stickers. We also created small posters to put up to explain what the stickers were for, as well as just small postcard size items that have information about resources, primarily our own tools such as screening tools, We Can Relate service, and other information and referral services. Our hope is really to start conversations and decrease the stigma surrounding mental health by really helping to identify students, teachers, and staff who are willing to listen and provide support. And so this was kind of another layer, if you will, on top of setting up We Can Relate, and has been a great way for us to promote that program in a really safe and friendly and open way. As we move forward, we're continuing to look at how to build on this work. So as I noted, We Can Relate was built on top of an already successful warm line service. And so we've been running that service for a long time. We've built it up to a large number of hours every day, 7 days a week. The We Can Relate service was really set up as, here's an idea, let's see how it goes and see if there's really a need and interest. We have had positive response to it. It's continuing to grow, and because it was staffed at those very small number of hours by volunteers, it was very low cost for us to initiate. And so the fact that it was staffed by volunteers and developed as part of a social work internship under my direction really made it an affordable option for us to give it a shot and see how it went. We now have $50,000 available to us to staff that program in 2023. So we're planning to use those funds to expand hours, pay staff rather than relying simply on volunteers, and promote the service as well. And then we're also seeking additional funding streams, particularly those that are interested in suicide prevention among youth and young adults. We know that that is a high-risk time for a lot of people, and yet we tend to focus on, as with many services, on crisis and not on providing the support at the front end. And so we think that this is a really strong strategy to provide that peer support and really help students and young adults stay connected to other people and share their own experiences. So with that, I'm always available to answer questions. I hate reinventing the wheel, and most of us do, and I'm always willing to help other organizations think through how to make some of this work for them as well in their own states. So my contact information is below, and I appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Shauna. You can all see why we love our regional policy reps so much and all our MHA affiliates. They're doing extraordinary things throughout the country. Today we heard about how in this time of unprecedented national distress, the rates of youth crisis are really through the roof. But plans are being put in place to assure that youth and their families in crisis have the appropriate people to talk to, someone to come if needed, again, appropriate for youth, and a safe place to be until crises are resolved. We heard about some ways to prevent crises and to attend to people before they reach the crisis stage. We heard about it in youth's own voice and the importance of youth voice. Boy, are they impressive. We heard about peers in schools and colleges, mental health days for youth, mental health education in schools and colleges. We heard about the need for more professionals in schools and on campuses, as well as peers. And from RPC's own Shauna Mulvihill, we heard how she listened to those voices and took steps at her MHA to fill in some of the gaps that they saw there by meeting young people where they are with the We Can Relate program. I want to thank you all for spending time with us today. We have a Survey Monkey that will go out to you all. It will be put in the chat. You can also see it right there, the QR code. We really appreciate your feedback. It means a great deal to us. And I once again want to thank our industry partners, our sponsors who help us do what it is that we need to do. We appreciate your financial sponsorship, and we appreciate being our partners in the field. I want to do a shout out to our amazing Regional Policy Council reps, certainly to Shauna, who you heard from, and to Barb Johnston of MHA, Mental Health Association in New Jersey, to Ben Harrington of the Mental Health Association of East Tennessee, and of course, and always to our newest member, to Laura Evans of MHA's Vibrant Behavioral Health, the home of 988. I want to also give a special shout out to some of my colleagues, actually to all of my colleagues. What a pleasure it is to work with you. But that special shout out to people you can't see who've been behind the scenes that made this meeting possible. To Susan and Janelle and Stuart and Katie and Jackie, and to Josh, who helped us with the production. He was a wonderful event manager. You can follow MHA. Here's all our information for the places to follow us. And we hope that we're going to see you soon at upcoming Mental Health America events. We have our national conference coming up. Registration is now opened for our conference in June 6th to 9th. It will start off with a policy institute, again, focused on youth. We're looking forward to 2 more regional policy council meetings this summer in Indianapolis, and in December, we will be in Raleigh, North Carolina. So again, thank you all for joining us, and don't forget to take the survey. See you next time. Bye-bye, and thank you.